Hi, I've been playing and painting different tabletop wargames for quite a while now, and I've always considered the prospect of trying my hand at YouTube, but never really having the motivation or feeling the need to become Warhammer 40k lore tuber number 503,904. But recently, I've become unhealthily obsessed with a small tabletop skirmish game. This Quar's War created by Josh Qualtieri in 2009 at Zombie Smith Games, but more recently with the hard plastic refresher models at Wargames Atlantic giving new interest to the hobby. These small, adorable, vicious killing machines caught my eye through a mention from an Eons of Battle video before I picked up my own Clash of Rifles box and became more and more invested in the history, faction, and units until I reached this point. So here I am, looking at a mostly complete, quick timeline of the Quar, their leaders, battlefronts, and major historical events. You're probably thinking that it's a bit optimistic to try to cover the entire in-universe history of the Quar for my first attempt at a video. Yes. As a quick primer on Quar are a humanoid anteater race who live on the world of Alwyd. A varied world with many different climates, ecosystems, and natural features. Something not so familiar to us is the Sithwin, the month of storms. Every third year, at the end of the calendar, all of Alwyd is tormented by the worst storms imaginable. I'm talking floods destroying your crops. I'm talking sand from the deserts being taken to the highest peaks of the mountains. I'm talking about a tornado inside your nan's house. Go check on her. But still, Quar are hardy creatures, and they continue. They enjoy things just like you and me. Farming, relaxing, spending time with family, Animal Crossing on their Nintendo devices. You know, they crave a fulfilling and easy life. They eat bugs, lots and lots of bugs. Unfortunately for these Quar, they're at war. In fact, they've nearly always been at war. For over 700 years, the Quar have been at war. The current conflict is the Crusade, which has been chugging on for 2 decades. I will try to go back from as far back as I can, and give a recap of events leading up to the current Crusade, but keep in mind that some battles and even factions are very bare bones in terms of lore, and in the grand scheme of things, it's all down to the creator of the game. You could massively update everything tomorrow and this would all be out of date. But here we go. Circa the 700s to 800s, the Great Wall of the royalist nation of Koftir is constructed. 1501, Gregor IV is crowned at the age of 9 in Anyara. 1524, Anyara goes into all-out civil war after their queen mysteriously dies in her sleep. 1529, Abba becomes completely independent from Anyara. There are many conflicts between Abba and Anyara, including the Third Abba-Anyaran War in 1583, where Abba take the Anyaran capital of Glasda before surrendering shortly after. 1642, Creven absorbs eastern Anyara. The records here are patchy, and we jump forward nearly 100 years to 1711. Sune Alakinda Rinvenk was born in the country of Tok, in the mountainous city-state of Skar. Keep an eye on this guy, he might be important later. The city-state of Spear Tull attempts unsuccessfully to secede from Tok in 1729. The siege lasts 6 months. In 1730, Lower Barrow finally, after 7 years of threats, invades Tok with a full army. The cities of Wiss, Bramble, and the port of Holm fall quickly. The siege of Holm from Tokish forces goes badly. Fatigued riflers encounter a bigger force defending the port than expected, and armoured support, which had been clearing Bramble and Wiss, does not arrive to push with the troops. And when their lines broke, the Barrowese forces quickly surrounded the army of Tok. Severe rainstorms swelling the water levels of Guarna Creek made retreat impossible, and a majority of the Tokish forces were captured or killed. This included Alakinda, remember him? Who was himself detained and taken to a POW camp in Lower Barrow. This was a disaster for Tok, who came to a truce with Lower Barrow shortly after this botched siege. In early 1734, the Mergo clan merchant train returned to its ancestral lands along the Crevish border after travelling Alwyd for several years to find that in their absence, Crevish farmers had crossed the border, taken their lands, and had nearly mined the clan's tin mine dry. Under the cover of darkness, using makeshift weapons and hunting rifles, The Anyaran merchants attacked the farmsteads and gathered up the farmers and their families. No one on either side was seriously injured, and the North Fey escorted the Crevish farmers back across the border and burned the homesteads and standing crops left behind. 1742. Crist invade Tok and Lower Barrow simultaneously. Alakinda feigns resistance in order to stretch the Crist supply lines as far as possible before decisively crushing them. 1744. The Foskilde is formed in Western Anyara, a shadow government outside of Glasda's control and influence. 1746. Tok invades Chrysaor. Alakinda leads a bloody assault on the heavily defended lakeside capital. The war is ended 2 weeks later. 1747. Tok captures Lower Barrow, with 5 city-states surrendering to Alakinda without any violence. Only the Lower Barrow city-state of Mulf offers resistance. Alakinda installs a puppet government in the region. 1756. Sildric Mir Mervyn IV takes the throne of Coftir. 1757. Tok and Crist come to a shaky truce, with an arranged marriage and several city-states and swaths of land being given to Crist. This is deeply unpopular in both regions. A war breaks out between Tok and Crist. Tok defeats Crist, exiles the deeply unpopular ruling class, and cements a truce for good. 1760. Tok becomes ruled by a parliament, with the monarchy becoming ceremonial. This is the first of the Crusader states. 1763. Merbrek and Coftir are driven from the Tolmarise lands. 1765. While Alakinda and his armies are in Tolmor, Duke Iko, a hater of Alakinda back in Tok, seizes power and forms a small army to defend his coup. Alakinda and his forces attack the city of Bulmarin, a large proportion of defenders being armed civilians and cadets. Duke Iko is killed, and King Vec of Tok is found dead in his palace. Blame is thrown both ways from the Crusader and Royalist sides. Alakinda puts Tok into martial law. 1766. A large number of Royalist noble clans meet in Creven and agree to form a vast, unified army to oppose the Crusaders. Merbrek is chosen as the location for this army. At some point in this time frame, the kingdom of Coftir invades the kingdom of Gwent, desiring its gold and other riches. 4 Coftiran armies break on the mountain passes in Gwent, but the 5th is successful. A deal is struck, and the Principality of Gwent is born. 1767. Marvin becomes Queen Marvin of Creven in the spring, but is banished by autumn. As the Grand Army is picked apart piecemeal in Creven to Merbrek's north, the most devastating blow to the Grand Army comes with the destruction of Merbrek's major ports. Laugardie and Hovudra had their major wharves destroyed by resistance fighters within Merbrek. 1768. Iaski is liberated by the Crusade, its crumbling infrastructure restored to support the war effort. 1769. After Gerin Ha, a popular Crusade sympathiser, survives an assassination attempt, a rebellion in Merbrek ousts the royalist monarchy and instates Ha as governor of the province against his wishes. 1770. Creven falls to the Crusader war machine. Merbrek willingly becomes a Crusader state. Coftir and Fidwog are the only 2 nations not to be occupied or have signed a peace treaty with the Crusader cause at this moment. 1771. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, the Great Wall of Coftir is breached. The breach of Gate 18 is quickly followed by breaches at Gates 16, 17 and 19. Within a month, a 200-mile stretch of the wall is in Crusader hands. 1772. Winter approaches, and despite the Crusader armies having breached at least 10 gates of the wall, the advance slows to a halt. Trouble in Crusader land causes supply lines to slow. The Scythwin of 1772 comes early and stays late, lasting until 1773. It is the hardest hitting Scythwin in generations. 1773. The Crusade withdraws all of its forces out of Coftir to the wall. Ha steps down as governor in Merbrek in the midst of an economic crisis. 1774. The retreating Crusaders blow up large portions of the wall as they retreat into less hostile territory. Both sides of the war are in turmoil. Coftir is economically and physically devastated. King Mervyn IV disrupts 3 coups before the year ends, but hangs on to power in Coftir. In 1775, Mervyn IV sends his nephew, Cernal Aelrib, as diplomatic envoy to treat with the Principality of Gwent. As Coftir becomes more indebted to Gwent, Aelred becomes a puppet to the principality, accepting worse deals and promising Coftirian support to any Gwent expansionism into Tolmor. 1776. The Freydal Overseas Department is formed of soldiers from Fidwog. 1777. The newly formed FOD instigates and leads an insurrection in southern Crasil. Rumours of Alikinda's failing health begin to circulate. Har is reinstated as governor in Maer Brec after a meeting with Colonel Loek. 1779. Colonel Loek gives himself command of all Crusader forces west of Lake Morandi. Har, Loek, and Rhaedir of Western Arnyara agree to a pact to allow Western Arnyara to reclaim ancestral lands within Creven. In return, Loek requires 2 conditions be met. First, the Western Arnyarans are to attack into northwestern Koftir with enough force to withdraw resources away from Koftir's border with Maer Brec. Secondly, to not invade Aber. This plan is only known by Har, Loek, Rhaedir, and the leaders of Iaski. Loek declares that the Crusade would be leaving Creven to her fate, and the centre of the Western Crusader power would return to Slovik in Maer Brec. This is to relieve Iaski from throwing resources in futility into Creven to quell rebellion. 1779. Malvin is crowned Queen of Creven once more. 1780. Alakinda passes away. Arnyaran spies in Tog deliver the news of Alakinda, home to Western Arnyara, within 5 days of his death. As a direct result of the death of the leader of the Crusade, Upper Barrow, Crasil, and Eastern Shram declare their independence from the Crusader cause. In 1781, a joint Gwent Coftirian force commits to invading Tolmor. While they are engaged on this front, West Arnyaran land trains led by Jigor Rhaedir and his Foskilde cross into Koftir and Creven, taking them by complete surprise. Elsewhere, Iaski forces invade Creven. All focus had been on the newly opened offensive against Tolmor. Brithdir falls in the first week, and 2 weeks later the wall is breached for the second time in a decade. The Battle of Alth brings the Alliance enough time to mount a proper defence. The Western Arnyarans are repelled. Fidwog and Koftir come to Creven's aid against the Western Arnyarans. The 3-day Battle of Eretini is recorded as some of the fiercest fighting in the Crusader era. The FOD and Iaskivite forces nearly wipe each other out. Crasil erupts into civil war. And that takes us to now. So we're caught up for the time being. The leadership of the Crusade is very much up in the air, with some wanting Alakinda's son to take up the mantle of his deceased father, while others wanting the very popular Loek to take charge, who has already been leading the Western offensive for some time. Since the Crusade started, there have been 4.2 million casualties in Tok, and 4.6 million casualties in Koftir. On top of this, there have been millions more casualties in occupied nations and allies alike on both sides of the conflict. And that's this Quars War. It is very much a narrative in progress, so who knows what will happen in the future. There is plenty more to this world. Whether faction focuses or more in-depth look at some of the battles, I'll be happy to make videos about it if the interest is there. Or surely I get monetized, then get enough money to buy a 3D printer and start printing Quar for myself. Either way, thank you for watching, and goodbye.